Perhaps you misunderstood.
I expect the terms we agreed upon to be met, precisely as written.
Get out. Who the hell do you think you are walking in here? The words sliced through the polished silence of Prestige Motors like a blade. Brad Hutchkins, sharp suit, gelled hair, teeth unnaturally white, ripped the brochure from the elderly black woman's hands so violently that her reading glasses jerked forward on their thin gold chain. Before the paper even touched the floor, he crumpled it, hurled it toward the exit, then stomped it hard with his shoe, kicking it across the marble like something diseased. The woman did not move. Her name was Eleanor Hayes. 68 years old, navy blazer from a clearance rack, worn flats with tired heels. She looked like someone's grandmother who had wandered into the wrong building, not a customer, in a luxury car showroom where every vehicle cost more than most people earned in a year. The showroom went dead silent. 4 customers suddenly became very interested in the floor. 3 salesmen hid grins behind their hands. No one spoke, no one intervened. Near the Porsche display, a teenage girl raised her phone. The red live icon glowed on the screen. 37 viewers, 40, 50, climbing fast. Eleanor stood perfectly still. No anger, no fear, no embarrassment. She simply glanced at her watch. 9 minutes remaining. Have you ever stayed quiet while someone destroyed themselves? Because you knew something they didn't? 23 minutes earlier, at 2:53 p.m., Eleanor had walked through the glass doors of Prestige Motors. The showroom stretched wide and immaculate 18 luxury vehicles arranged like museum exhibits under warm track lighting. Chrome gleamed. Leather interiors reflected the afternoon sun pouring through floor-to-ceiling windows. Eleanor moved slowly, deliberately. Not lost, not hesitant. She stopped beside a black Mercedes-Benz S-Class near the window and ran her hand along the hood with precise familiarity. Her fingers traced the body line. Her lips moved slightly, as if calculating. Depreciation curve. 18 months before resale drops below fleet threshold. She pulled out her phone to confirm something. For just half a second, her wallet opened, revealing a flash of platinum metal. No numbers, no logo. An American Express Centurion card. No one noticed. Except Brad. From across the showroom, he watched her touch the car, his jaw tightening. 34 years old, 3-time Salesman of the Year, plaques behind his desk like hunting trophies. His suit wasn't meant to welcome customers, it was armor, designed to intimidate the ones he decided didn't belong. He crossed the floor in 8 hard strides and positioned himself between Eleanor and the car, arms folded like a warning. "Ma'am," he said sharply, "this section is for serious buyers. Used inventory is out back." Eleanor turned calmly. "I'm interested in the S-Class," she said. "What's your fleet discount structure for corporate purchases?" Brad laughed loud. Ugly, performative. He glanced at another salesman and smirked. "Fleet discount? You hear that?" Then he looked back at Eleanor, voice dripping with contempt. "Lady, you need to finance a Kia somewhere else. This isn't your market segment. I'd like to speak with a manager," Eleanor said. "The manager doesn't have time for tire kickers," Brad replied, deliberately raising his voice so others could hear. "This is a place of real business." Eleanor opened her leather portfolio, clicked a pen slowly. "What's your full name?" Brad grinned. "Brad Hutchkins. Hutchkins. Write it nice and clear. When you call corporate, they'll tell you exactly what I'm telling you now. We serve people who can actually afford our inventory." Eleanor checked her watch. 8:00 p.m. She typed a short message and hit send. "Meeting in 10 minutes. Dealership assessment complete." Brad leaned sideways, trying to read her screen. "Oh, you got a meeting?" he sneered. "Your church bingo group?" Eleanor said nothing. She turned toward the waiting area. "That seating is for customers only," Brad snapped. Eleanor stopped, straightened slowly. "I am a customer." Brad stepped closer, his cologne thick and suffocating. "No," he said. "You're someone wasting my time." Eleanor looked at him calm, steady, and spoke softly. "I'll wait until 3:10 p.m., then decisions will be made." Brad frowned. Decisions? Eleanor didn't answer. And right then, with cameras rolling, viewers multiplying, and 9 minutes ticking away, Brad made the worst decision of his life. He kicked the brochure out of her hands again. He had no idea that the entire dealership was about to change owners in front of everyone watching. The brochure slid across the marble floor and disappeared beneath a display stand. Eleanor bent down slowly, picked up what remained of the torn paper, and smoothed it against her thigh, as if restoring something far more important than ink and gloss. She did not rush. She did not flinch. That calm infuriated Brad. He took a step closer. "I told you to leave." Still, Eleanor said nothing. Around them, the silence thickened, the kind of silence that isn't peaceful, but cowardly. A white couple in their 50s stood frozen near a Lexus, eyes locked on the ground. A man in a tailored suit pretended to study his phone. No one spoke. No one intervened. Near the Porsche display, the teenage girl filming swallowed hard. Her name was Jessica Ramirez, 19 years old, community college student. She had never live-streamed anything like this in her life. Her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted the angle to keep Brad's face in frame. The viewer count jumped. 200, 500, 800. Comments poured in faster than she could read them. Is he serious right now? Where is this? Someone screen record everything. This is disgusting. Derek Williams, the floor manager, emerged from the office area, 45 years old, 12 years at Prestige Motors. He didn't rush, he observed, evaluating the situation like a chessboard he believed he controlled. He looked Eleanor up and down. "Ma'am," he said calmly, "there seems to be a misunderstanding. We qualify customers to use our time efficiently. Perhaps a different dealership would be more comfortable." "I'm comfortable here," Eleanor replied evenly. She walked toward the seating area again. Brad moved faster this time, stepping directly into her path. "I told you those chairs aren't for you." "Move, please," Eleanor said. Brad leaned in, voice low and threatening. "Or what?" Eleanor didn't step back. Instead, she reached into her portfolio, pulled out her phone, and took a clear photo of Brad's name tag. The shutter click echoed in the showroom. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Brad snapped. "Documenting," Eleanor replied calmly. "You've refused service, denied public seating, and made assumptions based solely on my appearance. I'm creating a record of this encounter." Brad laughed loudly, theatrically, the kind of laugh meant to humiliate. "You think corporate gives a damn about people like you?" The words hung in the air. "People like you." Jessica's live stream exploded. 800 became 1,500. Did he just say that? This is racist as hell. Someone call the news. Derek pulled out his radio. "Security to showroom floor," he said. "Need an escort." Eleanor checked her watch. 3:04 p.m. 6 minutes remaining. She stood motionless in the center of the showroom, holding only her leather portfolio. Her face showed no anger, no fear, just resolve. That refusal to leave that quiet, unyielding presence enraged Brad more than any argument ever could. At 3:06 p.m., 2 security guards entered. The first was James Wilson, 52, broad-shouldered, black, with eyes that had learned caution from years of watching power abused. He'd worked security at Prestige Motors for 4 years. The second was Rick Palmer, 31, buzz-cut, former military, moving with the aggressive confidence of someone eager to assert authority. Rick pointed immediately. "That her?" Derek nodded. "Won't leave. We've asked multiple times." Rick crossed the floor quickly. "Ma'am," he barked, "you need to leave the premises immediately." Eleanor turned to face him. "On what grounds?" "You're trespassing." "I'm a potential customer in a public business during operating hours," Eleanor said calmly. "I haven't threatened anyone. I haven't damaged property. What specific policy am I violating?" Rick hesitated. Brad jumped in. "She's harassing customers, creating a disturbance." Eleanor gestured to the room. "The only disturbance here is the one you created by refusing me service." The viewer count surged again. 2,000, 2,500. Someone in the comments posted the address. Prestige Motors, 2883 Woodward Avenue, Detroit. Another comment followed instantly. I'm calling Channel 7. Rick reached for his radio again, but James stepped forward first. Ma'am, James said quietly, can you tell me what happened from your perspective? Eleanor looked him directly in the eyes. I came here to purchase a vehicle. I was told I didn't belong, that I couldn't afford anything, that the seating wasn't for people like me. And your colleague kicked a brochure out of my hands, twice. James turned slowly toward Brad. Is that true? Brad opened his mouth, then closed it. The showroom held its breath. And for the first time, the story was no longer under Brad's control. Brad scoffed, his voice tight and defensive. She's twisting the story, he snapped. I was just doing my job. James didn't raise his voice. He didn't argue. I asked if it's true. The silence that followed was heavier than shouting. Brad's face flushed. I told her to leave. She refused. That's it. Before James could respond, a woman near the Lexus display stepped forward. Mid-40s, well-dressed. She had been silent the entire time. I saw it, she said quietly. Her husband reached for her arm, trying to pull her back. She shook him off. That salesman, she continued, pointing at Brad, kicked the brochure out of her hands. On purpose. Twice. Brad spun toward her. That's not... I saw it too, a teenage boy said suddenly. He held up his phone. I started recording like 5 minutes ago. He pressed the screen once. Video playback began. Clear. Unmistakable. Brad's shoe. The brochure. The kick. Derek's face drained of color. You need to delete that, Derek said sharply. The boy's father stepped forward, placing himself between Derek and his son. Why? He asked calmly. If nothing wrong happened, why delete it? More phones were up now, more cameras rolling. What had been 4 witnesses had become 9. A semicircle formed around Eleanor, customers, parents, teenagers, strangers, all watching. Jessica's live stream exploded. 3,000 viewers. Then 4,000. Comments flooded in faster than she could read. This is insane. Fire him. Where's management? I'm never shopping there again. Rick raised his voice, trying to regain control. Everyone needs to step back. This is a private matter. Private? The woman shot back. He humiliated her in front of all of us. Eleanor remained silent at the center of it all. She checked her watch. 3:08 p.m. 2 minutes remaining. Derek's phone vibrated in his hand. Corporate. He ignored it. It rang again. Rick shifted uncomfortably. Ma'am, I'm going to have to physically escort you out. I wouldn't, Eleanor replied calmly. Rick frowned. Excuse me? Touch me without legal cause, Eleanor said evenly, and you'll trigger a lawsuit this dealership cannot survive. Rick hesitated. James stepped between them. Hold on, James said. Did you issue a formal trespass warning? Derek blinked. I verbally told her to leave. Verbal warnings require reasonable time to comply, James replied. 10 to 15 minutes minimum. Otherwise, it's unlawful removal. Brad snapped, turning on James. Whose side are you on? James met his gaze without flinching. The legal side. Eleanor checked her watch again. 3:09 p.m. 1 minute. Jessica's live stream crossed 5,000 viewers. A blue checkmark appeared in the comments. David Torres, Channel 7 News. We're pulling into the lot now. Keep recording. Derek finally answered his phone. Yes, this is Derek Williams. Whatever he heard on the other end wiped the color from his face. Wait, you're watching the live stream? He pulled the phone away from his ear. The voice on the other end was loud enough for those nearby to hear. Fix this. Right now. Derek ended the call, his hand shaking. Brad sensed the shift. His confidence cracked. Derek, he whispered, what's going on? Eleanor didn't look at him. She opened her phone and turned the screen toward James. It was a lock screen photo, a professional headshot. Eleanor, in a tailored business suit, standing in front of a corporate logo, Hayes Capital Partners. James's eyes widened. Rick followed his gaze, confusion flashing across his face. What is that? Eleanor lowered the phone. The back door to the executive wing opened. Footsteps echoed across the marble, and then a voice, strained, shocked, unmistakably afraid, broke through the chaos. "Dr. Hayes?" Every head in the showroom snapped toward the sound. Because the meeting had officially begun, the man who had spoken stepped fully into view. Richard Chen, Regional Vice President of Prestige Automotive Group, 55 years old, immaculate suit, leather briefcase in hand, a man used to walking into rooms where everyone straightened their posture. But the moment he saw Eleanor, he froze. The briefcase slipped from his fingers and hit the marble floor with a sharp crack that echoed through the showroom. Color drained from his face. Dr. Hayes," he said again, barely above a whisper. The room went completely still. Brad's mouth opened slightly, then closed. Derek stared at Richard, then at Eleanor, his brain scrambling for logic that no longer existed. Richard took a half step forward, panic creeping into his voice. We weren't expecting you until 3:30. Eleanor glanced at her watch. On p.m. "No," she said calmly. "This is exactly when I said I'd arrive." She looked directly at Richard. "The assessment," she continued, "is complete." Brad laughed nervously. A short, hollow sound. "Assessment?" he said. "What assessment?" Richard didn't look at him. Brad turned to Derek. "What the hell is going on?" Derek swallowed hard. He couldn't answer. Eleanor stepped forward. Her worn flats clicked softly against the marble. The sound carried farther than anyone expected. Brad tried again. "Who is she?" Richard finally spoke, his voice tight. "She's the owner." The word landed like a dropped weight. Brad blinked. "That's not funny. It's not a joke," Richard said. "Robert Prestige sold the company." Brad shook his head. "No, that's impossible. Robert Prestige is Prestige Motors." "He was," Richard replied, 14 months ago, September 2023, Eleanor continued, her tone precise and emotionless. 58% controlling interest, she said, purchased through Hayes Capital Partners, $42 million. The sale was intentionally quiet. Derek's knees nearly buckled. Rick took an involuntary step back. Jessica's live stream erupted. "Wait, she owns it? This is insane. Someone clip this right now." Richard found his voice again, desperation creeping in. "Dr. Hayes, if I'd known you were coming today." "That's the point," Eleanor interrupted. She turned to face him fully. "If you had known, you would have prepared. You would have warned staff. You would have staged the right behavior." She gestured slowly around the showroom. "I needed to see what actually happens when a black woman walks into our dealership looking ordinary." She reached into her blazer pocket and placed a small device on the hood of the Mercedes. A red light blinked steadily. "I've been recording since 2:49 p.m., she said. Every word, every action. A low murmur rippled through the crowd. Derek's phone began ringing again. Corporate. He didn't answer this time. Eleanor turned toward the customers and employees who had gathered. "My name is Dr. Eleanor Hayes," she said clearly. "I'm the majority shareholder and CEO of Hayes Capital Partners." Phones rose higher. Camera lenses zoomed in. "Before private equity," Eleanor continued, "I spent 15 years litigating corporate discrimination cases." Brad's breathing grew shallow. Eleanor walked to the Mercedes and opened her portfolio. She removed several documents and laid them neatly on the hood, one by one. "SEC filing," she said. "Board resolution authorizing immediate operational intervention. Cloud-backed audio recordings. And in a moment, preserved CCTV footage." She looked directly at Derek. "You do have security cameras in this showroom, correct?" Derek nodded mutely. "Good," Eleanor replied, "because this is now evidence." Richard tried again. "Dr. Hayes, surely we can discuss this privately." Eleanor didn't raise her voice. "No," she said. "This happened publicly. It will be addressed publicly." Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, a Channel 7 news van pulled into the lot. A camera crew stepped out. Inside, Brad finally understood the truth. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a complaint. This was an audit, and it had just gone catastrophically wrong. Eleanor turned back toward the center of the showroom. The space that had felt untouchable just minutes earlier now felt exposed like a stage with the lights turned too bright. Customers stood shoulder to shoulder. Employees hovered at the edges. Every phone was raised. Every breath was measured. Brad stood frozen. Eleanor faced him directly. "Brad Hutchkins," she said evenly. "Employee number 4921. Hired January 2018. Brad swallowed. "Sales performance for 2024, Eleanor continued. $4.2 million in revenue. $142,000 in personal commission. She paused just long enough for the numbers to land. And 47 customer complaints filed to corporate over the past 3 years. Brad's eyes flicked to Derek. 41 of those complaints involved women, Eleanor said. 33 involved customers of color. A low gasp moved through the crowd. Average response time? Eleanor added, 16 days. Average resolution? Verbal warning. No documentation. Derek's face tightened. Eleanor turned toward him. Derek Williams. Floor manager. Employee number 2, 156. 12 years with the company. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. This location generates $38 million annually, she said. 6th highest in our network. She took one step closer. It also has the highest staff turnover rate, 67%. Several employees exchanged glances. The highest customer complaint rate per transaction, Eleanor continued, and the lowest diversity metrics of any location we operate. Derek opened his mouth. No words came out. Eleanor reached into her portfolio again and removed another document. 2 weeks ago, she said, I hired an independent auditing firm. I sent them here as customers, undercover. Brad shook his head. That's not. Eleanor didn't look at him. They documented a consistent pattern, she continued. High-value customers of color were steered toward finance managers who added unnecessary fees. She looked up. Average additional cost per transaction? $3,400. Murmurs rippled through the room. Total excess charges last year, Eleanor said. $680,000. That landed harder than any insult. That's not poor customer service, Eleanor said quietly. That's systemic fraud. Brad finally spoke, his voice cracking. We didn't. Those fees are standard. No, Eleanor replied flatly. They aren't. She turned to Derek. I compared this location to our Troy branch, she said. Same inventory, same manufacturer incentives. She held up 2 contracts. Troy charges an average of $400 in dealer fees. She raised the second contract. You charge $3,800. Silence. And only to certain customers, Eleanor added. She didn't need to say which ones. Derek stared at the floor. Eleanor turned then slowly toward the security guard who had stepped in earlier. Mr. Wilson, she said. James straightened instinctively. You applied for a sales position here in May of 2022, Eleanor said. Correct? James hesitated, then nodded. Yes, ma'am. You had 10 years of automotive sales experience, Eleanor continued. Consistent top performer reviews. Customer satisfaction scores averaging 92%. James swallowed. You were rejected, Eleanor said. The stated reason was not a culture fit. James's jaw tightened. 3 weeks later, Eleanor went on, this location hired a 24-year-old with 0 automotive experience. She paused. His previous job was retail electronics. No one spoke. You were offered a security position, Eleanor said, at $18 an hour. No commission, no advancement path. The math was obvious. Eleanor looked at Derek. Would you like to explain culture fit to me? Derek couldn't meet her eyes. Eleanor turned back to James. As of this moment, she said clearly, you are promoted to sales manager of this location. James stared at her. I, ma'am? You're qualified, Eleanor said. You're ethical. And you understood the law well enough to prevent this situation from becoming violent. She held his gaze. This dealership needs leadership. You'll rebuild it. James drew a steady breath. Yes, ma'am, he said. I will. Eleanor turned back toward Brad and Derek. Her voice remained calm. As for you two, she said, we need to talk. She gestured toward the glass-walled conference room at the back of the building. Now. And as they followed her under the gaze of thousands watching live, Brad finally understood something far worse than being yelled at. This wasn't about humiliation. This was about consequences. The conference room was all glass and steel. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the service bay, where mechanics continued working, unaware that careers were collapsing just feet above them. A long table dominated the center, 12 leather chairs. None were offered to Brad or Derek. Eleanor took the seat at the head of the table. Richard Chen sat to her right, loosening his tie with trembling fingers. Across the table, Derek and Brad stood side by side, back stiff, eyes darting. The power dynamic had flipped completely, and they felt it. A large screen on the wall flickered to life. Sandra Okoye, the CFO, appeared via video call from Chicago. Late 40s. Sharp eyes, controlled voice. She was mid-sentence when she noticed Eleanor. "Dr. Hayes?" Sandra said, startled. "I wasn't aware you were visiting Detroit today." "Unannounced," Eleanor replied calmly. "The assessment is complete." The door opened again. Thomas Brennan, corporate legal counsel, stepped in carrying a tablet and a thick folder. Harvard Law. Nervous energy. He closed the door behind him. "Conference room secured," Thomas said. "I've pulled all requested files." Eleanor nodded. "Thank you." Thomas displayed the live stream. He tapped his tablet. Jessica's live stream filled the screen. 12,000 viewers. Comments flying. The timestamp showed the feed had been live for 34 minutes. Sandra's face drained of color. That's happening right now?" she asked. "Yes," Eleanor said. 23 minutes ago." Richard tried to speak. "There was an incident involving—" "Don't sanitize it," Eleanor said, her tone ice cold. "Tell them what actually happened." Richard swallowed. "Brad refused service," he said. "Told Dr. Hayes she couldn't afford our inventory. Physically kicked a brochure out of her hands. Security was called to remove her." Sandra closed her eyes. Thomas didn't hesitate. "It's all recorded," he said. "Multiple angles, witnesses, live stream, audio, clear pattern." Eleanor turned to Sandra. "Financial exposure," she said. Sandra began typing rapidly. Charts appeared on the shared screen. "Potential class action lawsuits from affected customers," Sandra said. "If discovery confirms discriminatory pricing patterns, estimated settlement exposure between $15 and $40 million. Brad's breathing quickened. Sandra continued. "If the Department of Justice initiates a civil rights investigation, penalties could reach $55,000 per violation. 37 documented cases would push federal penalties into the millions. That's before legal fees and reputational damage." She paused. "Conservative estimate, $18 million total exposure." Worst case scenario flashed onto the screen. $70 million. Brad made a strangled sound. Eleanor let the silence stretch. Then she looked at Thomas. "Legal assessment." Thomas didn't hesitate. "We lose," he said flatly. "The evidence is overwhelming. Any reasonable jury would side with the plaintiffs." Eleanor stood. She walked slowly toward Brad and Derek, heels silent on the carpet. "You have two options," she said. "I'll explain them once." She placed 2 documents on the table. "Option 1, she said, tapping the first page. "Immediate termination for cause. 0 severance. Public statement acknowledging discriminatory conduct. Full cooperation with any civil or federal investigations." She paused. "Your names are added to our permanent Do Not Rehire database. Shared across 47 dealership brands nationwide." Brad's face went pale. "Option 2, Eleanor continued, sliding the second document forward. "Voluntary resignation under a remediation agreement." She looked directly at Brad. "You forfeit all pending commission. That's $34,000 currently in your pipeline." Brad flinched. "You complete 200 hours of unpaid community service at the Detroit Community Equity Center," Eleanor said. "You record a public video apology admitting discriminatory behavior. And you are permanently barred from management positions within any Prestige Automotive Group property." She stepped back. Option 2 allows you to control the narrative, Eleanor said calmly. You resigned to pursue other opportunities. You made mistakes. You're working on personal growth. She tapped the first document again. Option 1 means I control the narrative. And I will be honest, Derek finally found his voice. This is excessive, he rasped. For one incident. Eleanor's eyes hardened. One incident? She pulled out her phone and began reading. February 14th, 2024, she said. Email from you to your sales team. Pre-qualify customers. If they don't look like they can afford it, move them along quickly. Derek's face drained of color. April 3rd, Eleanor continued. Email to Brad. Good job handling the situation with the urban customer. Keep focusing on our core demographic. She looked up. Urban customer, she said. That was your code, wasn't it? Derek said nothing. Eleanor lowered her phone. This isn't one incident, she said quietly. This is culture. She returned to her seat. You have 3 minutes, she said. Choose. Brad stared at the documents, hands shaking. Termination would follow him forever. Resignation, at least left a future. Derek spoke first, barely audible. I'll take option 2. Brad looked at him then, at the live stream still playing on the wall. Thousands watching, recording, remembering. Me too, Brad whispered. Eleanor nodded once. Thomas, she said, draft the agreements. I want signatures within the hour. She stood. Security will escort you to collect personal items, she added. Your access cards are deactivated as of 4 p.m. Derek looked like he wanted to say something, apologize, maybe beg. Eleanor's expression stopped him. This conversation is over. She walked toward the door, then paused. One more thing, she said without turning around. Every interaction today, including this meeting, has been recorded. She glanced back. Attempt to deviate from these agreements, and option 1 becomes automatic. Brad and Derek nodded, defeated. Eleanor opened the door and stepped back into the showroom. Outside, thousands were still watching, and the reckoning wasn't finished yet. Eleanor returned to the showroom at 3:45 p.m. The space looked different now, not because the cars had moved, but because the illusion had shattered. 14 employees stood together near the reception desk. Sales staff, finance officers, service technicians. Word had spread fast. Jessica was still streaming. 15,000 viewers. Eleanor stepped back into the exact spot where Brad had shouted, "Get out." The irony wasn't lost on anyone. She didn't raise her voice. My name is Dr. Eleanor Hayes, she said calmly. I'm the majority owner of Prestige Automotive Group. Every conversation stopped. What happened here today, Eleanor continued, was unacceptable. It did not happen by accident, and it does not end with 2 people losing their jobs. She turned slightly toward the employees. James Wilson is now the sales manager of this location, she said, effective immediately. James stiffened, still processing the weight of the title. A few employees exchanged stunned glances. This dealership will be closed for 48 hours, Eleanor continued. Mandatory training for all staff. You will be paid for that time. No exceptions. Relief passed through the group, followed by nervousness. Eleanor paused, then said something far more uncomfortable. If you participated in discriminatory behavior, steering customers, adding fees selectively, profiling based on appearance, you have 48 hours to come forward voluntarily. The room went very still. Honesty now, Eleanor said, means retraining and accountability. Lying now means termination when we uncover it. And we will uncover it. A young salesman near the back raised his hand hesitantly. Dr. Hayes, I saw things, he said quietly. I didn't speak up. I didn't know how. Eleanor looked at him, not unkindly. You have 48 hours, she repeated. Document everything. Names, dates, incidents. Bring it to James or send it directly to corporate HR. The young man nodded, relief visible in his face. Eleanor turned then to the customers, the witnesses who had stayed. 9 of them remained. A woman stepped forward, the same one who had spoken up earlier. Her voice shook. I'm ashamed I didn't say something sooner. Eleanor met her eyes. Then say something next time, she replied evenly. Silence is what allows this to survive. The woman nodded, tears forming. A teenage boy, the one who had recorded video, spoke next. Are you doing this at other dealerships? Eleanor didn't hesitate. Yes, she said. 23 locations. Covert assessments are already underway at 6 others. A murmur rippled through the room. This isn't about revenge, Eleanor continued. It's about accountability and real change. Outside, through the glass walls, Channel 7's cameras rolled. Reporters spoke into microphones. The story was already spreading far beyond Detroit. Eleanor looked back at her employees. This location reopens Friday, she said. New policies, new leadership, new culture. She checked her watch. Dirt. Onbesh PM. Behind her, Brad and Derek were escorted past the showroom, carrying boxes of personal items. No one clapped. No one jeered. They walked past the cars they once treated like trophies. Jessica's live stream chat flooded with messages. This is how you do it. Accountability, not excuses. Power handled correctly. Eleanor watched them disappear through the side exit. Then she turned back to the people who remained the ones who would determine whether this place truly changed. The work, she said quietly, starts now. And for the first time that day, the showroom didn't feel expensive. It felt honest. The next morning, the showroom doors were locked. No customers, no sales pitches, no polished smiles. Inside Prestige Motors, rows of folding chairs replaced leather lounges. Employees sat shoulder to shoulder, sales, finance, service, some nervous, some defensive, some quietly relieved. Eleanor stood at the front beside a portable screen. James Wilson stood to her right, no longer in a security uniform, but in a simple dress shirt. The shift was subtle but profound. This isn't punishment, Eleanor began. This is correction. The first slide appeared. Reform Initiative, Phase 1. Effective immediately, Eleanor said. This dealership will no longer negotiate prices in ways that allow bias to hide. Slide 2. Transparent pricing system. Every customer will see the same prices online before they arrive, she explained. No backroom numbers. No selective discounts. Manufacturer incentives apply equally to everyone. A hand went up. So, no negotiating at all? A salesman asked carefully. You may offer published incentives, Eleanor replied, but there will be no discretionary pricing that somehow only benefits certain people. The room was quiet. Next slide. Commission structure change. Sales compensation will no longer be tied to final negotiated price, Eleanor continued. It will be a fixed percentage of MSRP plus customer satisfaction metrics. A murmur spread through the room. Yes, Eleanor said, acknowledging it. That means discrimination will no longer be profitable. She clicked again. Independent complaint system. Complaints will no longer go through store management, Eleanor said. They go directly to corporate HR and an external ombudsman. She displayed a number on the screen. Every business card, every contract, every website page, this number will be visible. Someone whispered, "That's serious." Eleanor nodded. It is. Then came the slide that shifted the room. AI interaction monitoring. Gasps. Uneasy looks. Cameras already exist in this showroom, Eleanor said calmly. What's changing is how the data is used. She showed a sample report. It tracks response times, language patterns, inventory shown, finance wait times broken down by demographic trends. A finance officer raised her hand. So, we're being watched? You're being evaluated, Eleanor corrected. By data, not feelings. The same way customers deserve to be treated. She paused, letting that land. Bias hides in patterns, Eleanor said. Patterns don't survive data. James stepped forward for the first time. This protects you too, he said. No more pressure to handle customers differently. No more code words. No more looking over your shoulder. Several employees nodded slowly. Eleanor clicked to the next slide. Mandatory training, 40 hours. This will not be corporate videos you sleep through, she said. This is real work, role-playing, hard conversations. External facilitators from the Detroit Community Equity Center and Michigan State University. Someone exhaled sharply. "Yes," Eleanor said. "It will be uncomfortable. Growth usually is." She looked out at the room. "Mistakes made in good faith will be coached," she said. "Patterns of behavior will not." She stepped away from the screen. "This is how systems change," Eleanor concluded. "Not by pretending the problem doesn't exist, but by removing every place it can hide." The room stayed quiet, but it was a different kind of quiet now. Not fear. "Attention." The next slide came up slowly. Community Oversight Board. The words alone shifted the room. "This dealership will no longer be accountable only to itself," Eleanor said, "or to executives who fly in twice a year." She clicked again. 9 names appeared on the screen. Representatives from the NAACP Detroit chapter, the Latino Business Association, Disability Rights Michigan, LGBTQ+ advocacy groups, small business owners from this neighborhood. She let the list sit. "This board will meet quarterly," Eleanor continued. "They will review pricing data, hiring practices, complaint outcomes, and customer experience metrics." A salesman near the back raised his hand, nervous. They can fire people?" "Yes," Eleanor answered without hesitation. "They can recommend termination, and those recommendations will be acted on." A ripple of unease moved through the room. "This is not symbolic," Eleanor said. "It's structural." She turned to James. "James will report directly to corporate," she said, "not to regional management. That firewall ends today." James nodded, jaw set. Eleanor advanced to the next slide. Management bonus reform. "Management bonuses will no longer be based solely on revenue," she explained. "They will be tied to 3 things." The screen displayed bullet points. Staff diversity and retention. Customer satisfaction scores, weighted across demographics. Verified reduction in complaints, not suppression. "If complaints disappear without explanation," Eleanor said calmly, "that will trigger an investigation." A finance manager spoke up quietly. "What if we're trying and still make mistakes?" Eleanor looked directly at her. "Mistakes made while trying to do the right thing will be coached," she said. "Patterns that show intent will not." She paused. "The system knows the difference." The next slide appeared. Hiring reform. "No more culture fit as a reason," Eleanor said. "That phrase has been used to hide discrimination for decades." Several employees shifted uncomfortably. "All hiring panels will be diverse," Eleanor continued. "Decisions will be documented. Rejections will require written justification tied to job criteria." She glanced toward James again. "And any candidate rejected at this location can request an independent review." James nodded. "That ends today." A younger employee raised his hand. "What if people say this is lowering standards?" Eleanor didn't hesitate. "Then they've misunderstood what standards are," she said. "Excellence and fairness are not opposites. Bias is not a qualification." She stepped away from the screen and faced the room fully. "I want to be very clear," Eleanor said. "This isn't about creating fear." She paused. "It's about removing the safety net that allowed harm to repeat." She looked around, faces tense, thoughtful, uncertain. "For years," Eleanor continued, "people here learned that silence was safer than honesty, that looking away protected your job." She shook her head. "That ends now." Outside, through the showroom windows, a small group had gathered community members who had seen the live stream and come in person. Some watched through the glass, some held phones, some just stood there, arms crossed, waiting. Eleanor followed their gaze. "They're watching," she said quietly. "Not to punish you. To see if this place becomes what it claims to be." She returned her eyes to the room. "You don't earn trust with words," Eleanor said. "You earn it with consistency." James stepped forward. "We're going to do this right," he said. "Not because we're being watched, but because it's overdue." For the first time, a few people nodded without fear. Not because they were told to, but because they understood something fundamental had shifted. The rules hadn't just changed. Who was allowed to enforce them had changed too. By Sunday morning, the story had escaped Detroit. It was no longer just a viral live stream. It was a national conversation. The Detroit Free Press ran it on the front page. Luxury dealership discrimination exposed and confronted by its owner. The article detailed everything: the refusal of service, the kicked brochure, the live stream, the reveal, and the reforms. It included still frames from Jessica's video and confirmed corporate filings that verified Eleanor's ownership. Within hours, the story hit 1 million views online. Reporters wanted more. A journalist asked Eleanor directly during an interview, "Critics say you set this up, that this was entrapment." Eleanor leaned forward slightly. "Entrapment requires inducing someone to do something they wouldn't otherwise do," she said. "I induced nothing. I walked into my own business and behaved exactly as any customer would." Another question followed. "But you suspected this might happen." "I suspected," Eleanor replied. "I didn't know. That's why the assessment was necessary." The reporter pressed again. "Some people say your response was too harsh, that Brad and Derek deserved another chance." Eleanor didn't blink. "They had chances," she said. 47 of them. The room went quiet. "Each complaint was an opportunity to change," Eleanor continued. "They chose not to." The interviewer tried a softer angle. "What about forgiveness?" Eleanor paused for a moment before answering. "Forgiveness is personal," she said. "Accountability is professional." That quote spread faster than the original video. By midday, NPR requested an interview. CNN asked Eleanor to join a business ethics panel. Harvard Business School emailed asking permission to develop a case study. Eleanor declined most of them. She accepted 3. 10 PR. A TED Talk. The Harvard Case Study. "I'm not interested in celebrity," she told her team. "I'm interested in systems." On social media, reactions were mixed: outrage, praise, skepticism, hope. But one theme appeared again and again. This is how accountability should look. No excuses. Real consequences. Change the system, not just the headline. Jessica watched it all unfold from her dorm room. Her follower count had jumped from 400 to nearly 30,000 overnight. She posted one final comment under the replayed video. "Y'all, she really owned the dealership." The phrase became shorthand for something larger. It wasn't just about ownership. It was about who holds power when no one thinks they're watching. And somewhere in Washington, D.C., someone was watching very closely. Because this story was no longer just about one dealership, it was about an entire industry. And the reckoning was just beginning. Monday morning, 9:02 a.m. Eleanor's inbox chimed once. Then again. Then a third time. The subject line on the newest message stopped her cold. U.S. Department of Justice, Civil Rights Division. Subject: Inquiry regarding industry-wide practices. They weren't asking about a single incident. They were asking for data, methodology, documentation, patterns. They wanted to know how one dealership had produced such clear evidence and whether similar practices existed elsewhere in the automotive industry. Eleanor read the message twice. Then she forwarded it to Thomas Brennan, her legal counsel. "Pull everything," she said calmly. "All locations, all audits, full transparency." Thomas hesitated. "If we open this door, it won't just be Prestige Motors." "I know," Eleanor replied. "That's why we're doing it." By noon, internal reports began stacking up. From other cities, other dealerships, different states. Same patterns. Longer wait times for certain customers. Higher fees added quietly. Soft steering toward cheaper inventory. Complaints downgraded. Language coded just enough to avoid detection. What happened in Detroit wasn't an anomaly. It was a blueprint. By 2 p.m., Eleanor was on a secure call with DOJ analysts. No cameras, no press, just questions. How did you identify the bias? How long did it take to surface patterns? What internal resistance did you face? Eleanor answered methodically. "We remove discretion where bias hides," she said. "We use data instead of intuition. And we made accountability unavoidable." One analyst asked the question that mattered most. Do you believe this is happening elsewhere in the industry? Eleanor didn't hesitate. Yes, she said. At scale. The line went quiet. Then the analyst spoke again. We'll be expanding our review. That was it. No drama. No speeches. Just the click of a system shifting into motion. That afternoon, executives at other dealership groups began receiving quiet calls. Compliance teams scrambled. Legal departments requested emergency briefings. The ripple had become a wave. Back in Detroit, James Wilson stood in the reopened showroom, reviewing new sales protocols with his team. The atmosphere was different, cautious, yes, but cleaner. No whispered code words, no selective glances, no pressure to handle customers. Just process and accountability. James paused, looking out through the glass. For the first time, he didn't feel like he was guarding a system that didn't want him. He was shaping one that did. And Eleanor, standing alone in her office, allowed herself a brief moment of reflection. Not satisfaction. Resolution. Because justice doesn't always arrive with sirens or verdicts. Sometimes it arrives quietly in emails, audits, and policies and changes things so deeply that the old way can never return. The real cost of discrimination was finally being calculated, and this time, the bill was coming due. Friday morning, Prestige Motors reopened. The sign was the same. The glass still gleamed. The cars still sat beneath perfect lighting. But something fundamental had changed. There was no rush of salesmen sizing people up at the door. No quick glances at shoes, watches, skin tone. No whispered signals across the showroom. Instead, a receptionist smiled and said, "Welcome. How can we help you today?" A black couple walked in. Within seconds, a salesperson approached, not hovering, not dismissive, just present, respectful, professional. James Wilson watched from a distance. Not as security, as leadership. The transparent pricing board stood clearly by the entrance. Every number visible, no mystery, no leverage, just facts. A woman in work boots browsed luxury SUVs without being redirected. An elderly man asked detailed questions without being rushed. No one was told they didn't belong. Outside, a few community members paused, peering through the glass. Some recognized the place from the live stream. Some had avoided it for years. Now, they were curious. Jessica Ramirez walked in quietly, phone in her pocket this time. No live stream, no audience, just observation. She watched a salesperson kneel slightly to speak eye level with a customer in a wheelchair. She watched a finance manager explain fees without rushing or obscuring. She whispered to herself, almost surprised, "It's really different." Across the city, across the country, other dealerships were scrambling. Emergency trainings, policy reviews, quiet firings, lawyers billing late into the night, because everyone had seen what happened when bias met daylight. And they knew something else now. Silence was no longer safe. In her office, Eleanor Hayes stood by the window, looking out over the showroom she had once entered unnoticed. She hadn't changed her clothes. She hadn't raised her voice. She hadn't demanded respect. She had simply allowed people to reveal who they were and then held them accountable. That was the lesson. Power doesn't always announce itself. It doesn't always wear a suit or flash a title. Sometimes, power walks in quietly, waits patiently, and lets the truth do the talking. And when the truth finally speaks, it doesn't need to yell. It just changes everything. Because real justice isn't about humiliation. It's about transformation. And in that dealership and far beyond it, transformation had finally begun. The end.